Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 19 Glitch in the Matrix and supernatural stories for you. Roads simply lead from A to B, or so we thought. Case file number 21159, written by Fave Dish. A shortcut through everywhere and nowhere. Was walking in a very familiar area with my friend, let's call him John, on the way to my other friend's house, let's call him Chris. It was a fairly long walk to Chris's house, so John and I decided to cut through this path we had taken several times before that connected one neighborhood to another. Like around 50 to 75 feet of wooded area, one path in a straight line. We come out from the path and are on the street that does not look familiar in any way. This was in the time of cell phones, but before GPS and smartphones. So we called Chris and told him we're at the intersection of two streets, and we told him the names on the signs. He sounded super confused and was like, I have no idea where those streets are. So we walked back on the same path we had just taken and came out on the street right near his house, not at the street we originally started on. We told him what happened, and we tried to look up the other two streets on a map because we thought it was funny that he didn't know where those streets were, since they were so close by. As far as we could tell, those streets did not exist in either neighborhood or in the surrounding area. I've taken that path many times before and after this happened, and it never occurred again. Case file number 21160, written by Owls. When Greek was sung without a single word. When I was 9, my grandfather was in the hospital. He was very sick and had just been moved to a hospice-type hospital. I wasn't told this at the time. All I knew is that he had switched hospitals. My grandmother was living with us while he was in the hospital, staying in my brother's room across the hall from me. One night, I woke up to the phone ringing. I tried to go back to sleep, didn't think anything of it. But then I heard my mom get up from her room and come open my grandma's door. Through the door that was cracked like an inch, I heard her say, I'm sorry, Mommy, but the hospital just called. Daddy's gone. And my grandma saying, No, he can't leave me. Then I fell asleep. In the morning when I woke up, I heard people talking who didn't sound like my parents. As I came downstairs, I saw a bunch of shoes by the door, remembered what I had heard the night before, and realized a bunch of family had come over. Fast forward a few weeks or months, not sure, but I was telling my parents about how I had heard my mom that night. My parents stared at me and then told me she was not speaking English to my grandma. They were speaking Greek. I can't speak Greek. I knew like 6.5 words, and they're all food and like, I love you. But when I told my parents, my dad apparently had gotten up with my mom, but since he didn't say anything, I didn't know he was there. What I heard, my mom freaked out because it was the exact words what she said to my grandma and what my grandma said to her. The exact words. Now at 25, I can understand more words and somewhat follow what my grandma is saying. She's 90 and lapses into Greek halfway through her sentences now. But yeah, it was a glitch. I randomly understood fluent Greek at 9 years old, and then it all faded away. There's a lot of stories about this where people suddenly just understand a language for a brief moment in time, and then the knowledge fades away. It's like the knowledge is downloaded temporarily, but only when you need it. Case file number 21161, written by 666. An old bar's tale of the deep black. About 11 or 12 years back, we moved into this apartment in a little old town right outside of Buffalo, New York. This place is ancient, built around the 1860s, and it's an old bar on top of a hilltop. On top of this bar is an apartment, and that's where me and my family lived. I was about 13 years old at the time, and I was in the living room where me and my father were both using the two computers in the room. From my living room, there's an open doorway which you can easily see in the kitchen. Connected from my kitchen is yet another open doorway, which connects to the mudroom and hallway for your shoes, whatever you want to call it. Going into my kitchen from the mudroom was a little two-step stairway, because the mudroom was at a higher elevation than the kitchen. One night, I was with my father in the living room, and I was starting to get a bit hungry. Getting up from my seat, I walked over to the doorway of the living room, till I just stopped. There was this dark, tall outline of a figure just sitting on the steps of my kitchen. The kitchen was pretty dark, but do you know what a deep black is? That was it. This thing was a dark, dark black compared to the shade that the kitchen was in. So I turned and asked my dad, "Hey, is Mom home?" Because I thought my mom had just woken up or something from a nap and was about to smoke a cigarette or something similar to that. Nope. My dad turned around, told me no before stopping just as I did. His eyes got wide, just like mine did too, and he stayed still for a solid minute before looking at me and asking if I saw that too. Of course I nodded, and he stood up, standing at the doorway as well. He yelled a couple times into the kitchen, trying to get this figure's attention, but to no avail. Connected to the living room was a bedroom, and he quickly ran into there, grabbing his knife off the dresser before running back over to the doorway and flipping on the light. Just as he turns on the light and the entire room is illuminated, this figure completely disappears from sight. I didn't understand at the time, but my dad put the knife in his jean waistband, quickly ran over to the stairwell, and put his hand down where the figure sat. Apparently to him it was warm, as if somebody was just sitting there. To this day, we really don't know what it was, and my father can still confirm the story. Apparently, a couple of people died in the bar below us from accidents, or straight up involuntary endings in the bathrooms. I don't think I or he really knows if it was connected or not, but a member of my father's close family was one of the people who perished in the bathrooms. Case file number 2162, written by I. M. Wayne Powell. Inside the threat of the belt in the bed. I keep all my belts on the back of my bedroom door. No idea why. We also have this thick rug, which means to shut the door, you really have to push it hard. This in turn knocks the buckles on the belts. One night, the belts start knocking, and I assume one of my kids is about to climb into the bed. 4 kids, all aged under 10. It happens often. I shuffle over to make space in the middle as usual, but after a few minutes I realized, other than the snoring wife, no one else was in the bed with us. I got up to check the kids, and they were all tucked in, fast asleep in their own beds. Unrelated, but another thing happened a short while later. I awoke from a horrible dream that my youngest daughter fell off a cliff's edge. I felt something wasn't right, and went to check on the kids. In the girls' room at the other end of the house, a lamp, which we had been using as a temporary nightlight, had been knocked onto the floor and was burning into the carpet, bad enough that it burned through to the wooden floor. I'm sure it was only minutes away from flames. Case file number 2163, written by I. M. Parsec. A skeptic's doubt, but we saw its route. While being in a religious camp as a kid, my fellow campers and I saw a little, rudimentary cabin in the middle of a field where, if I recall, we were taught about the growing process of corn. Thing is, the cabin was missing its door, and despite it being quite far, you could see an old fridge inside of it. At some point, one kid mentioned that the fridge seemed to be closer to the doorframe than a few seconds before. Some laughed, some agreed with him. I decided to pay more attention to the position of the fridge and realized to my surprise that each time I turned around and looked directly at it, the fridge seemed to be a little bit further, a little bit closer, more to the left or more to the right. We as kids, of course, started freaking out. One of the oldest kids proposed to sit on the ground and close our eyes, suggesting that maybe we saw the fridge moving just because we were moving. If we were sitting still and the fridge changed position, then we would know for sure the damn thing was moving on its own. We all sat, counted to 3, and closed our eyes. We counted to 3 again and opened them. I still remember the chaos. Kids screaming, kids laughing, some seriously scared, and some utterly shocked. The freaking thing was right at the doorframe now, almost like staring at us. We ran to the adults and of course they dismissed our story, but I know what we saw. It wasn't just some kids getting crazy with their tales, it actually happened. You know, this reminds me of the weeping angels, I think they're called in Doctor Who. I never saw the show, but I do know about the angels, and those are creepy as hell. And it's still creepy as hell, even if you apply it to a fridge. Case file number 2164, written by Shadow Messiah 333. The Diary of a Time Traveler. Okay, so I was scanning my diary I kept in my youth, and stumbled upon the most puzzling entry. When I was little, I had some minor health issues, and due to this, I had to have some work done at the hospital. One of my appointments was scheduled for 7 in the morning and was a sleep study, so I needed to be up all night from midnight on, and if memory serves correctly, I wasn't supposed to eat either. Not that this detail is relevant. All of this is a memory I hold within my mind to this day, as that was an agitating time for me, and it all chronicled the way I would expect my amateur, prepubescent self to write, except one unbelievable detail. That night, my dad rented me 2 video games from our local Blockbuster, to give me something to do all night, and of course I included this in my entry. But somehow, I wrote about a game that I not only had never heard of at that point, but also didn't even exist until a couple years later. Tekken Advance. This was a game and series I knew nothing about at that age, because I didn't discover it until several years later. When I was going through that journal sometime in my high school life, I just couldn't comprehend how my younger self had written about something that didn't even exist back then. The series would have been in its infancy at the time, if I'm not mistaken. I'm all riled up just thinking about it now. Like, what the hell? Case file number 2165, written by Anonymous. The Latch That Lived. My parents owned a business and leased a building that had 3 large garage doors that were located on the back of the building. These doors led to a fenced-in yard for outdoor storage, with an alley behind that. The doors were not really close together, as the building was meant to have these smaller sections to it. One day I was there with the last 2 workers. We closed up shop, starting with locking the back gate to the fenced-in area. We then closed and locked all of the 3 doors, then finally the front door. I remember closing the door furthest to the west and locking it from the inside, with latches located on each side of the door. This door happened to be next to the eating area. There was a table, chairs, microwave, and refrigerator located just on the inside. When we finished locking the front door, the 2 workers hopped in my truck because they were parked in the alley and wanted me to drive them around the block. When we got to their cars, one of the workers told me that we forgot to close the door furthest to the west. I was a little confused, but after we all looked over there, we could clearly see the inside of the eating area. No doubt I forgot to lock it. So I tell them I'll take care of it. I drive around, unlock the front door, and walk the 100 yards to the west side of the building. When I get there, the door is closed and latched. At that point, a little bit of panic set in. Not only did my 2 workers call it out, but that meant someone must have opened it after I closed it originally, then closed it again and latched it. You could only latch it from the inside, which meant that they were still there with me. I looked high and low and found no one. My initial thought was that someone was hiding in the building. Finally, I left and called my parents. My mom answered her phone and I told her what happened. She then said, "Why do you think I stopped working late after everyone left? Last few times I was there, weird stuff happened." Case file number 2166, written by Broken Down and Busted. The Oval of Light encountered in the Nevada night. My wife and I took a trip out to the Nevada desert to explore the old mining towns and get away from the Bay Area. We were about 5 hours into our trip in the Nevada high desert, hauling butt, since the road was remote, and we had to get to the hotel before 10 p.m. The road was pitch black, and it was obvious when another vehicle was approaching, but there weren't any. We came over some rolling short hills and saw a single bright light about a mile up the road. It was probably a motorcycle or a person with a headlight out, right? As we got closer, the light seemed to change shape and color. It went from a normal headlight-sized beam to a large oval and got slightly yellowish and blue. It then got really bright and blinked out completely as we got closer to the location of it. We figured whoever it was drove down another road linked to ours, but as we got to the spot, there was nothing there, and I mean nothing. No side roads, no driveways, nothing but the road and desert. I still have no idea what the hell I saw, and it's kind of fun knowing that. Yeah, preserve the mystery, right? It is fun. Case file number 2167, written by Gross at Heart. Orange coat, endless road, orange coat. A few years ago, my friend used to do late-night paper deliveries in the super backwoods redneck area. It was just easier to do it at night so they could beat traffic. I'd go with her and her brother, and it seemed like every time we went, the weirdest things would happen. This one sticks out to me. We were driving down the road at about 3 or 4 a.m. and noted that this person in an orange coat was riding their bike. We all remarked that we'd never in a million years be out in that area on our own so late, and made a few wrong turn jokes. It seriously seemed like the kind of place where hillbillies would come out of the forest wielding axes and chainsaws. We just kept driving and passed them. A few miles down the road, we saw the same person in an orange coat on a bike just casually riding. None of us could think of any possible way that they could have gotten in front of us. This wasn't the kind of area where there were shortcuts or back roads. It was pretty much like one long, two-way road that would branch off to smaller, short, straight roads with houses along them. They were mostly dead ends, cul-de-sac type streets. Everything else was forest. It was just a really strange feeling. And it was absolutely the same person. Case file number 2168, written by Clockwork Cage. The Coins of Confusion. Sometimes, small things disappear out of my hands, like disappear from reality. The first time I remember it happening, I was 5 or 6, standing outside in our backyard, holding a small toy I'd gotten from one of those 25-cent machines. I closed my palm around it completely because I didn't want to lose it while I was walking around, and it was just big enough I could feel it in my hand until, very suddenly, I didn't anymore. I looked for that stupid thing in the dirt for what felt like hours, but a neon pink toy would have been hard to miss, and I never saw it again. Another time in high school, a friend gave me a coin from a country she had just returned from visiting. I don't remember where. She traveled a lot during the holidays. I didn't have pockets, so I was holding it tightly until I could get to my bag in my locker. It was just a short walk down the hall, and there were almost no people around. So when I got to my locker and realized it wasn't in my hand anymore, there weren't many places to look, and if it had hit the ground, it definitely would have made a sound, but it didn't. Most recently, I lost a pair of earrings I had taken out to put in my dresser. I live in a very small apartment, but there's still quite a bit of carpet. So I gave myself the benefit of the doubt for a while. Eventually, I got so frustrated, I moved the furniture out and vacuumed the whole room just to see if I could find them that way. But nothing, I never did. Everything just keeps disappearing for me. Case file number 2169, written by Grish Bear. The weird photo where past meets present. So this happened about 5 years ago. I was just out of high school, and I'd gotten back in touch with someone I went to school with, through her job at the time. Her good friend was someone I had also gone to school with, so the three of us would hang out. So her friend goes on a trip about 4 hours away to a tourist type of town. The hotel she was at had pictures of people and groups that have been there. The friend I work with and I were hanging out when she got a text, asking if I'd ever been to this town. Specifically when I was younger. I can't remember, but I know it's possible. I've taken family trips around there before. She then sends a message with a picture from the early 2000s of about 20 people. There I am, in the front row, wearing clothes I remember to be mine. I confirm that it's me and talk about how crazy it was to just run into a picture of me as a kid in a random hotel like that. A classic small world thing. I take another look at the picture and it dawns on me that I don't recognize anyone else in the picture. There are several adults and a group of kids. They weren't classmates and teachers or on sports teams with coaches or anything. It wasn't an old field trip because my friend at the hotel was in the same classes as me around the same time the picture was taken, and she wasn't in the photo and didn't recognize anyone either. I show my parents and they can't explain why I was even there, let alone recognize anyone else in the photo other than me. So at a hotel in the northwestern lower peninsula of Michigan is a picture of me on a trip nobody can remember me being on with people nobody can recognize. Creepy. Case file number 2170, written by Lenny Ektrick. The Doppelgänger of the London Tube. About 3 years ago, my girlfriend and I were on the tube, London Underground, going to a party or something. It was busy, but we had seats near the door. The next stop, a woman with her 4 or 5-year-old son got on and stood right in front of us. I'm not big into eye contact with strangers, but out of the corner of my eye, it seemed like this kid was staring at me, so I couldn't help but look at him to check. He was a spitting image of me at that age. It was really disturbing, and he was just staring right at me for the entire 6 or so minutes before they got off the train. But it certainly felt like he didn't look away from my face, which, as he was short and I was sitting down, both of our faces were pretty level. Not for a single second did he look away. I nudged my girlfriend and whispered that this kid won't stop staring, and he looks exactly like me at that age. And while she couldn't be sure until we got home and I showed her photos, she was genuinely freaked out by the weird way he was staring at me. Anyway, after a few stops, they got off. The kid kept staring at me as his mom led him into the platform, and he raised his hand up to me in a sort of static wave. It was a very, very strange and unsettling experience. Case file number 2171, written by Lint Liquor. Bunk bed bursts in darkness immersed. During my freshman year of college, my roommate and I were sleeping in bunk beds after a long night of drinking. The room was pitch black, and there were several bottles of hard alcohol open in the closed room. All of a sudden, we both wake up to what I describe as mini fireworks going off in the room. They were like when you get those large static electricity pops, peeling a fleece blanket away from a mattress, but in the air, and bigger and louder. The flashes lit up the room and made a pretty loud cracking noise. There were at least 5 and maybe as many as 10 over a period of about 2 minutes. We had a large metal radiator near the head of the beds, and they may have been sparking off that. We both saw it and couldn't explain how this was happening. My theory is that alcohol from the bottles was evaporating and built up in a high enough concentration to spark from static. But my chemist friend has told me that's basically impossible. Ball lightning, maybe? Case file number 2172, written by Octoblerone. Back in sight in a phone's light. My first experience. I was staying at Phil's house for about a month in November. My wife and I left his place to go stay at my mother-in-law's. I realize as we leave that I cannot find my wallet. This doesn't bother me as it happens often. So off we go to my mom's. 2 days later, we are back at Dad's. We set our overnight bags on our air mattress. Wife stays in the room, and I walk out to get water. Then I walk back to the room, just talking to my wife, and then I walk into the bathroom. From the bathroom, the wife says, "Oh, good, you found your wallet." The hair on the back of my neck stands up. I walk back into the bedroom she's in, and the wallet is on top of the cell phone I set down minutes prior. That one still gets me. The second oddity. In the car, looking for shades I left in my sun visor. I can't find them, so I grab a different pair. We drove for maybe 10 minutes, making several turns. As it is late in the day, there was a lot of glare from the sun, so I'm flipping the visor open and close multiple times. On the 4th or 5th time I open it back up, The glasses I was initially looking for fall out from the visor onto my lap. No little disc holder or pocket things, just the visor. Case file number 2173, the hammock, the dog, and the bee. I was falling asleep in a hammock one summer when I was a kid, hanging out with my dog, with my mom sitting a few feet away reading something. I was right on that edge of drifting off to sleep when I heard this really weird voice. Sounded like a young girl talking through bubbling water. Cry out, "Ah, bee!" I'm really uncomfortable around bees and shot up in reaction to this alert, and noticed my dog hopping around spastically and twisting her body around, like she was trying to avoid something she couldn't see. I went to go calm her down, and sure enough, she had a welt forming on her nose from a bee sting. Looked like a grounder, what we call the bees that build nests underground, had gotten her while she was digging under her favorite bush in the yard. It was around this time that I realized the voice I had heard didn't come from my mom, and there was no one else around. I asked if she had heard the bee warning, and she said she hadn't heard anything. Maybe I imagined it. I'm damn sure my dog didn't actually talk, but I've never been able to figure it out. Case file number 2174, written by 1200 Calorie Cake. The gas station lost to time and space. Driving home from a trip on an interstate we had traveled up and down since I was in first grade. Took an exit to get gas, and of course the gas station is 1.3 miles away. I ended up driving there, and it was all woods and fields, until we got to what was a sad excuse of a gas station. My mom was sleeping in the passenger seat, so I alerted her I was going to use the restroom and would be right out. Seemed like a bunch of country folk, based on the lifted trucks, and an old dude with his grandson and dog in a Mustang. As I walked up, a kitten came out meowing, so I picked it up. The gas station attendant came out and said I could keep it, since someone left it there. I went straight back to the car, told my mom to hold my new cat, and went to grab an energy drink and use the restroom. The restroom seemed to be an afterthought, since it was basically plywood and the inside was covered in Sharpie graffiti. I went back out to the car, and the old man comes up with his grandson, starts telling me that there's been a lot of kittens running around this farm, and if I wanted to trade the one I just picked up. I said we didn't have time, and I liked the cat I had found. He said, "Well, have a safe trip. That's a special cat right there." My family and I have never found the exit where I got the cat, and they've checked off each exit they've visited on trips. I've had the cat for 7 years now, from a gas station that doesn't exist. I don't think that gas station or exit was meant to be found, and I doubt we will ever find it again. The cosmic kitten. Like the old man said, she must be special. Case file number 2175, written by Anonymous. The Unheard Ding and Supernatural Speed. My roommate and I decided that we wanted to eat. So, as we were heading out of our room, we saw one of our friends, maybe 20 feet ahead of us, speed walking to the elevator room. Assuming she was going to be late for work or something. We called after her, but she wasn't listening, and we stopped calling her. When she turned into the elevator room, not even 10 seconds later, we turned into the room, and she was gone. She wasn't behind the vending machine or the door, and those were the only two places to hide. It's a straight hallway, and the stairs are on the left side while the elevators are on the right, so we would have seen her if she was going anywhere else. She straight up vanished. We thought about it for a while and realized that we would have heard the elevators. They're loud and they ding even louder. You can hear it on the other end of the hall, and it's a long hallway. We looked outside the window that overlooks the streets, and we saw that she had already crossed the street and was headed towards where she worked. Within 15 seconds or so, from us seeing her down the hall, she had run down the hall, somehow got an elevator or something, and got from the 8th floor to floor 1, and it was across the street, all within seconds. Either she's magic, or something glitched. Look, anything involving elevators, just chalk it up to a mystery box. Case file number 2176, written by I Am Spinda. An impossible slice of sugar, spice, and everything nice. I had gotten a slice of lemon cake. Covered in sugar, it was great. To eat while watching YouTube at my desk. It was seriously delicious. 5 minutes later, I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I looked at the bowl I used to put the cake slice in, and there was another slice of a different cake. It was brown and coated with sugar and cinnamon. We never bought any cake like that. I was really weirded out, but ended up trying a bit of the cake, and it was pretty good. It tasted like a banana. An hour later, my mom gets home with a bag of pastries from a shop that opened up near her workplace. One of the things she bought was a banana cake with sugar and cinnamon. When she said it, I was floored. She looked at my shocked face, asking if I really wanted the cake that badly. She pulled it out to show me. It was missing a slice. I asked her if she ate some. She said no. And the cake had no slice missing when she bought it. Mysterious teleporting cake, damn, I want that. Where's my cake? I don't see it. Want a bowl with a cake in it? Come on. Case file number 2177, written by Lux Interiors, a meadow in an unending day. I was 17 years old, had recently started dating a new boyfriend, and we would often go to a local state park for an hour or so after class just to walk around and be alone. One October day, it was incredibly warm out, and we decided to go a little further into the woods than normal, because we heard there was a beautiful coastline a mile or two up the road from where we typically parked. As I was driving, the road eventually narrowed from 2 lanes, no center lane, go New England, to 1 lane, then even narrower. Then the pavement became dirt and the road was so crowded by trees, I had nowhere to go to park or even turn around. Given I was obviously invincible at 17, and just kept on trucking because frick it, why not? Now that I'm older, I would see that as a huge red flag and just turn right around. But nope, I was an insatiable teenager when it came to adventure. I drove for about another mile, up and down hills, mostly up, and around some of the tightest curves and winds I'd ever seen. Slowly, the trees thinned out and eventually opened up to a big meadow. But still there was nowhere I could park without either obstructing the road or driving over brush. I drove even further up the road, just past the field, and back into the densely wooded area, when I spotted a small, dusty pull-away on the side of the road. Perfect. We got out of the car, I locked it as always, tossed my keys in my pocket. We head straight down to the field, which gives away to a few trails which lead down a steepy grassy hill and into the forest. Keep in mind, this is in the same forest we always go to, and we are familiar with the trail style and signage. So we don't pay much attention to direction, but rather on the scenery. And each other, duh. We walked for what felt like half an hour when it started to rain. This is where the memory gets really surreal for me, like a waking dream. We turned around and tried to head back out the path we came in on, but it ended up winding and leading further into the woods. The rain was light and misty. It was still warm and sunny out. We wandered the pass for another hour, it seems, but we're not too worried. The sun is still up. We keep on for what feels like another hour, and are starting to get frustrated. By this math, school was out at 2:30, driving time included. It should be at least 5, and the sun should be coming down, but it's not. Check our phones, it's 7 p.m. Why is the sun still up? We pick up the pace and try to use GPS to get out of there, but no service. Somehow, we find ourselves coming up the same hill that we came down. As we come up, I see a house, then 2. Then 3 abandoned houses in a line in the center of the same meadow as before. There are trees all around and in between the houses, but nowhere else in the field. The houses look old, maybe mid-century. Unfinished siding, windows and doors boarded shut, no visible entry point. My truck was now in front of the houses, parking spot and all, still locked. We honestly were so freaked out, we just got in the truck and turned around and left. Freaking freaky man never went back. Now time for the jokes of the day. Joke number 1. The doctor told me, "You have cancer, but we can treat it." I asked, "What's the cure?" The doctor replied, "The Cure is a British rock band fronted by Robert Smith, but let's try to stay focused." Joke number 2. Which country has the largest number of parks in the world? Korea. As a matter of fact, I'm good friends with 5 of them. This is wrong but great. Joke number 3. It's a 5-minute walk from my house to the bar, but a 45-minute walk from the bar to my house. The difference is staggering. Joke number 4. A lot of people don't know that you're actually born with 4 kidneys, and as you grow up, 2 of them become adult knees. Puns are too good. Joke number 5. My wife thinks it's weird that I stare through the window during a heavy rainstorm. It would look a lot less weird if she would just let me in. Damn, that's a rough wife. It's like being in the doghouse, but outside. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.